Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host. And as you can see, I have with me a very distinguished diplomat, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, who has been India's ambassador to Oman, UAE, Saudi Arabia. He has served as also at the level of the secretary in the government. And he's also a scholar, has written several books on the Middle East or West Asia, as it is described in India. And today we are going to do a review of several major developments. Ambassador Saab, it appears as if the IPL of diplomacy is going on with all the hectic activities. It's like a tournament of events. The Beijing summit with Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, and then the Brics foreign ministers meeting, and now Marco Rubio is in India for the Quad and other activities. And of course, today is like tremendous hectic activity going on in Tehran. Not only is Pakistan's Field Marshal Asim Munir there, the Qataris have also arrived in Tehran. Shehbaz Sharif has gone to meet Xi Jinping simultaneously. The rumors here in Washington is that even though he's pretending to go there to celebrate Pakistan China 75 years celebration, the reality is actually he's mediating between Iran and China. Just as Asim Munir is mediating between Iran and the US. And then there's another fourth dimension of negotiations going on between Iran and Oman to establish a port authority to collect toll. So there's a lot of things going on. But I want to start by asking you this simple question, sir. When the foreign ministers meeting happened with the Brics and the way it transpired, I was tempted to write an essay asking the question, is Brics dead? And now I just want to add this to it. Are both Brics and Quad dead?
I would like to emphasize to you that Brics is one of the most robust organizations in international affairs today. You should not make such quick judgments on the basis of their inability to get a joint statement at foreign ministers level. This is normal in all large multilateral bodies, that you are not able to get consensus in respect of specific issues. We are aware that in this particular meeting, we had two divisions. And they make complete sense. I mean, UAE is upset with the attacks that Iran has launched upon it, and India was not going to allow any sharp attack on Israel. So for these two reasons, at foreign ministers level, we were not able to go forward with a joint statement. Please recall here that during 2023, when you had 19 meetings of G20 ministers, except for the summit, not a single one of the ministerial meetings was able to produce a joint statement. So that was their context at that time was the Ukraine war. And the United States was very clear in its mind that the joint statement had to attack Russia. And India was never going to allow that. So actually, and finally, the Americans saw sense. They realized the importance of a joint statement at G20. They realized the mood of the global south. Coming to Brics, I want to emphasize to you that the reason you don't get major headlines is because they do extraordinary work in terms of detailed nitty-gritty of cooperation. These are not matters that are immediately grasped by the public at large. But I would like to say to you that some of the connectivity projects that they have, logistical connectivity, the progress they have made with regard to financial transactions, and also with regard to technological connectivity, in every one of these crucial areas, Brics has made tremendous progress. And do recall that they have I think 60 or 70 institutions have been set up. Brics institutions have been set up. Also now coming to the rest of the Brics agenda at the ministers level, there was tremendous consensus on all the other issues. And the chairman's statement is quite a remarkable document where all the countries, I mean, she was able to reflect the mood of the members by pointing out a strong support for an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital.
Yeah.
Now, this has very rarely been indicated earlier. So, regardless of the differences that UAE may have with Iran or India may have with regard to, may we not wish to get Israel condemned, there is extraordinary consensus among Brics members with regard to certain crucial issues that matter to us. The rest of the statement is also quite remarkable. So, in fact, if you see that statement, you would somehow miss the fact that they didn't agree on one or two issues. It's
Yeah.
quite likely that by the time we have the summit, we could come up with formulations that would please people and we could have a joint statement. I do not believe that the BRICS summit that is likely to happen shortly will be without a joint statement. That is where Indian diplomacy will work hard, and you will have Mr. Modi making it very clear that if he is going to be chairing BRICS, there's got to be a joint statement. So I would say my own sense as of now, there's no discussion about this in the public domain, but my own sense just now is that we could have a joint statement when we have the BRICS summit.
The previous one, the previous BRICS summit in Brazil, was very strongly worded on the Israeli attacks on Iran, and India signed on to that. Even the Prime Minister Modi was there. But you are right about the summary provided by the chair. In fact, I think that if they had a joint statement, it would not have been as rich as the
As
chairman's
strong
summary.
as the chairman's statement. Well, that's it. So I
Yeah,
think that we should not read too much at any time. World affairs is complex business. Countries have their domestic constituency to appease, their status within the region. And yes, I would say to you that at the time of the meeting, there had been attacks on the UAE just a few days earlier. So
yeah,
obviously, they had every reason to be seriously unhappy with what had happened. You remember the attack on Fujairah. Now, you and I may say that this was Iran making it very clear that that Israeli dome is not good enough. That was it was, and also please recall, many of these actions from the Iranian side have been overwhelmingly symbolic in character.
mhm,
They have not done extraordinary damage of the kind the Americans and Israelis do when they go on a bombing spree. Many of their Iranian actions have been demonstrative, I would say, and this is exemplified by the relatively limited number of casualties. I'm not pretending to you, I'm not suggesting to you that I support these things. I'm just trying to explain
yeah, I
as to
agree.
what would have impelled the Iranians. The Iranians have absolutely no interest in large scale destruction across the Gulf. They depend on the Gulf, and they are going to depend on the Gulf once again, politically and economically, once the ceasefire is in place. They are neighbors. They are bound by geography and bound by history,
Yeah,
bound
yeah.
by fate. There is no way they can walk off the regional stage.
I think it's a very important insight as someone says that, in marriage, just because you have a fight, it doesn't mean the marriage is over. So perhaps the same analogy would apply to BRICS that, okay, if they have a few agreements, it doesn't mean that the institutional momentum that BRICS has is undermined. I want to turn towards the Quad. There is a lot of discussions whether Marco Rubio is coming to repair relations with India and the US, or is he just coming here to sell oil? I think Marco Rubio is more focused on making India buy Venezuelan oil and taking advantage of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the supply chain problems with regards to energy. But do you think that there is any sincerity at all in the US efforts to maybe try and repair Quad? Or is it India which is trying to use Marco Rubio's visit as an opportunity to repair relations? And India may actually buy some oil just to make the Americans happy. How do you see this, sir?
2 points here. One is about energy security, and the other is about Quad. Let's talk about energy security. Now, it is very difficult to believe that the United States is capable of coming up with a coherent foreign policy approach. This, led by the president,
Yeah.
they exemplify in themselves chaos and anarchy. Very rarely have you seen a clarity of purpose and direction. Now, I agree that Rubio is come here overwhelmingly because there is a Quad meeting that he has to attend. Actually, there should have been a Quad summit,
Yes.
and it is Trump who dismissed it because he was unhappy with India. So, with that kind of a background, it is very difficult to see whether Rubio has the mandate to suggest something significant in terms of his presence in the country. I would not now, many of us as commentators and as academics who study regional affairs, we would have thought that Rubio is here, his first visit to India as Secretary of State, he is here to repair ties. You would like to believe that.
Yeah.
But for the life of me, I am not able to accept that at all because I have seen no indication whatsoever that Donald Trump has even thought about India in the recent weeks or recent months and is interested in repairing ties. India bruised his ego. He blames India for depriving him of the Nobel Prize. And I don't think he's interested in any such agenda which has long term implications. So leave that aside. Focus now on the energy. With regard to energy, India shares the concerns of almost all the other major oil importers that we are in for a very difficult time if the Hormuz continues to remain closed. This is a global catastrophe and it is affecting everybody. Over the short term, countries come up with arrangements and mechanisms to safeguard their interests. Every one of them wants to protect their consumers their people from the impact of high prices. That is one sure way of losing electoral support and having an extremely disenchanted community and constituency, I may add. The United States is terrified about this because in November you're going to have midterm election.
Yes.
Now, India buys Russian oil, and Russia has provided over 30% of the oil that we have imported in the month of April. India also continues to buy oil and gas from the Gulf countries, particularly Saudi Arabia and UAE, because they are able to, they have arrangements, they have pipelines which can bypass the Hormuz. These are short term arrangements, and nobody is going to say that India could afford the Hormuz remaining shut for another month or so. It would start having an impact. Now, this American oil, we have bought it in the past,
Yes.
and more India is buying on the spot market. Our comfort zone is to purchase oil on the basis of term contract, where we do the contracting for a year, so we are assured of supplies, and we pay the price that prevails on the day of supply. So we will, our companies, particularly our government companies, prefer to have term contracts. But according to the present literature, India has been buying a lot of oil on the spot market. So we have sourced oil from Mozambique and from Nigeria and from certain Latin American sources. So this is again a short-term arrangement to tide over a country for the present moment. India has been a regular buyer of oil from Venezuela. Venezuela has heavy oil, and our Ambani the company at Jamnagar, refinery at Jamnagar, has been a major buyer of Venezuelan oil. It is heavy oil, it's available very cheaply, and the Jamnagar refinery has the technological capacity of getting refining any kind of crude oil, including the heavy oil that comes from Venezuela. So Venezuela is something with which at least our private sector in the shape of Jamnagar is familiar with. The Russians have also sold oil to us in the past. And as a goodwill gesture, we have from time to time purchased American oil. I remember at the time when Prime Minister Modi was going to visit Donald Trump earlier, as a goodwill gesture and to make him feel pleased, we had purchased some of the oil. The problem with oil, with American oil, is that I personally don't know what are its chemical properties. Indian
It's
refineries
a light one.
are used to oil that comes from the Gulf.
Yeah,
The second issue which we have to note is the fact that it's a very, very long distance and therefore the transport cost can be very
very
heavy.
right.
At times, to make their oil attractive to us, the Americans have given us some concession with regard to transport costs. But that cannot be a long term arrangement. So I would say to you that in the short term, India will pursue a series of options. I think number one will be the purchase of oil from Russia, regardless of what the Americans say. But I'm happy to see that the Americans keep on extending the grace period. And it's actually India will buy regardless of what the Americans say. And it is good if the Americans fall in line. We will buy on the spot market, we will buy Venezuelan oil, and at a pinch, we will also buy from the US. Do recall that the purchases from the US and from the spot market will be a small fraction compared to our total requirements. And I don't envisage any scenario where the Americans are going to be major sellers of petroleum to India. So I think this is my understanding of the energy scenario as of now.
The To just answer your question very briefly, apparently the oil that you get from Venezuela and other places are heavy and salty, whereas the one that you get from the US is very light and apparently sweet. Trump actually calls it sweet oil.
Mm.
It is different. So you actually need a different kind of a refinery.
Then you
Uh,
need a different. I appreciate because we have been buying Gulf oil
yeah,
for the last 50 years, 60 years, and our refineries are used to that oil. In fact, some
exactly.
refineries are dedicated to that oil.
For them, I
And
agree.
therefore, for Ambani, it is okay because he is the one person who has a state of the art refinery which can process any other kind of oil as well. But the others can't. I would say it's a short term arrangement. Ambani would be happy to accommodate the Americans, and I think he will buy the oil as a short term measure.
So a while ago, there was a lot of discussion about the fact that India's trade agreement has not been finalized and signed yet with the US. And even though there was all these announcements that there is agreement with 18% tariffs and all of that, there was also this discussion and chatter that both sides are renegotiating the deal actually and going into the details of it. And so there was a lot of talk about how Marco Rubio, when he visits India for the Quad foreign ministers meeting, there will be an announcement that the deal is finalized. And now it appears that no one is talking about the deal. I personally feel that India should not sign this agreement until the legal side of it becomes. Because what might happen is American courts might decide that Trump has absolutely no authority at all to impose tariffs. But once you sign an agreement with the US, then that agreement will become the legal basis on the basis of which
Yeah.
Trump will charge tariffs. So India should delay as long as it can. But do you think that uh, Rubio might use, or the US might use the agreement, the trade agreement, as a way of trying to pressure India to buy oil? If you remember, India had agreed to buy some $50 billion worth of stuff for every year for 3 years to reduce the trade imbalance, really. If you remember the deal, right? Yeah. So
I
do you
remember
think that is
that it had no basis in reality.
yeah. Yeah, but weapons or oil, do you think that
Yeah.
that's what Americans are thinking, that look, we have a $40 billion trade imbalance. If we can sell them $40 billion of trade, then we have a balanced trade. And they might pressure India into saying that buy our oil and we will have a deal.
I want to say to you that as of now, things are wide open.
Hmm.
there is not enough information in the public domain to guide us with regard to what is going on. Also, I would add that Rubio is not authorized to discuss a trade deal and finalize a trade deal. There are other people. These trade deals require a lot of effort and lot of focus on the small print.
Details. Yeah.
India had signed and had approved an agreement. I don't know what
They didn't
stage it
sign.
was finalized. We had approved an agreement that was very controversial in India.
Mhm.
While the government had stated at that time that it is good for India, many other commentators had felt that it was very one-sided and was very supportive of U.S. interests rather than Indian interests. Many commentators, economic commentators, had said that at that time. In Parliament, our minister said that this is a great deal and it serves India's interest. But the minute the Supreme Court took away from the president the right to impose tariffs, we immediately announced that that deal is no longer valid as far as we are concerned, and that it has to be re-examined all over again. Also, the court had intervened and said that the other tariff of 10% that
Is
Donald Trump had imposed, even that is invalid. So I think India would like to go slow on this crucial matter, which will have long term implications. I do not envisage a scenario where we could be quote unquote pressurized into doing something when the whole situation relating to trade is not at all clear within the United States. So it's not a matter for India to be rushing into any deal just yet. Also, within the Indian media so far, in the run up to the Rubio visit, there is a mention of trade, that it is on the agenda. It also mentions about energy. But really speaking, if you look at his program, this 4 days sounds like a lot, but he's also visiting Agra and Jaipur. He's also already visited Calcutta. He's
yeah.
going to visit Agra and Jaipur, and he's going to have the Quad meeting. So I'm not sure that he's either qualified for or mandated to discuss these details for which there are competent officers through in the office of
Yeah.
the U.S. United States Trade Representative and the Commerce Secretary and the Treasury Secretary. So I think we have some way to go in that regard. Basically, the question you had put to me earlier, and if you don't mind, I will address it now. The principal reason for Rubio to come is the Quad. Now, you will see that there is no air of excitement either in Washington or in Delhi
Yeah.
or in Tokyo or in Canberra at this stage. We are going through the motions. I want to make it clear that Quad is now well past its use by date. It has no future, it serves no purpose. It had become resonant in a very crucial set of circumstances. At a time when the three countries, when Japan, Australia, and India, in the later part of the last decade, had started sensing a sense of aggressiveness from China. And therefore 2016, 2017, 2018, in that atmosphere, we had revived in 2017, we revived Quad. India was also at that time rebuilding its ties with the United States. We had the interoperability agreement, the intelligence agreement, the purchase of American weaponry, and we were also doing all those exercises. That was the great heyday of Indo US relations. And then, of course, you remember that in 2019, India went along with the American proposal to raise the level of Quad to minister level, from middle level official to minister level. And at that time, Quad had a very robust security content. Whether we admitted that in public or not, the message was very clear in that atmosphere that we
Yeah.
four countries, three of them part of the so called Indo Pacific and the United States, are today have aligned ourselves to confront any problems that China may create for us in our region. There was a very solid security content in Quad. What happened? All of us know immediately. The Chinese didn't say much. They criticized the deal. They called it a nation, NATO, and things like that. They said it is bad for the regional security scenario, etc. As far as India is concerned, they moved 20,000 troops into Ladakh. A gentle reminder to India that your crucial security interests lie right here. And there is no useful purpose served in aligning yourself with these countries. India got the message very, very clearly. And we were part of that effort to play down the security content of Quad. Even though it was raised to summit level by Biden, by the time we came through the year, the Americans got the message that India is not going to be part of the security network, and they did the AUKUS agreement. So Australia, UK, and the United States, this Anglo-Saxon cabal, set up this agreement, and India is not in the picture. What you are, and of course, where Japan is concerned and Korea is concerned, they already have defense agreements with the American. India was the prize as far as the United States is concerned for its West Pacific interest. And hence this whole drum beating with regard to the Indo-Pacific, and it was to pull India in. But do recall here, at no stage did our understanding of the Indo-Pacific and the American understanding ever coincide. Initially, the Americans said the Indo-Pacific is up to the east coast of India. They were only focused on their maritime interests beyond the Malacca, and their crucial interest was to pull India beyond Malacca into the West Pacific. They didn't need India militarily. They needed India symbolically to say that this is a major Asian country, is now aligned with us, and we are going to oppose China. India made it very clear that this is not the place where it is comfortable. The agenda of the Quad has been significantly diluted in terms of the security scenario. And last point, Donald Trump has shown no interest in Quad. Yeah. I think with that you can see he works at a very different level. He likes to sit with leaders like him. He likes to sit with Xi Jinping, and if given the chance, he would sit with Putin again. That is where he thinks he belongs. And that is where he would like to be. There's no time for all these little countries getting together, whimpering all the time to him about their grievances. He's gone past all that. He's in his second term. He's focused on legacy. He doesn't even know where is Malacca. So I think that the Quad is now going through its death throes. Multilateral bodies don't overnight die away. They do not have a dramatic demise. They wither over a period of time. You go through the motions, you get together, you pretend you have an agenda, that you're talking to each other, that you still have relevance and value, but it withers away. I would say to you, though it is not part of our discussion today, the G20 is going through the same demise. Yes. That it had also come up in a set of circumstances when the G7 wanted to engage with the other emerging economies, and they had brought on board certain countries, very arbitrarily, but certain other countries as well. Now they have seen that the deep divide that you have in Europe between the West and the East, and the coming together of Russia and China on the one hand, and the competitions that have emerged between East and West, they don't see any value attached to G20. I'm just making that as an aside. And I think Quad is going in the same way.
So, I did an exercise day before yesterday while I was preparing for this interview. I actually went and looked at how the ministries of foreign affairs of these four countries define and talk about the Quad. So the US has actually got a change. The Indians never talked about it as a strategic. They talked about it as a strategic dialogue, but always emphasized there was not much talk about security. But the security narrative has disappeared from the US websites under,
I think we contributed also.
yeah,
That summit that we had, in-person summit,
yeah,
is the one that helped. And you can see the joint statement that
yeah.
emerged. It talks about health and
Health
vaccine
and
and
yeah,
technology,
internet connection.
longer
Like,
term issues,
yeah. In
not
fact,
security issues.
I remember making fun of that. I said it is like a internet providers summit. They're talking about
Yeah,
connectivity.
yeah.
It
Because
look,
India made it clear. And you see, the previous month they had already signed up on AUKUS,
yes.
elbowed the French out and gone ahead with the nuclear
What was
powered submarine. Even
interesting
that
to
is
me
not
is,
going anywhere, by the way. The nuclear, not nuclear submarine is not going anywhere either, I've read.
like if like, I'm assuming that every ministry has one person who's responsible for Quad, right? So if I was the guy responsible for Quad in the US or Japan, one thing that I would have done is call my colleagues on a Zoom meeting and have a common website or a shared agenda, right? So
Yeah.
when you read what each country describes, they are all different. The
We've
perception
all
of,
moved on.
yeah, they
We've
all
all
moved
moved
on.
on.
So,
We value bilateral relations. You know, this business of, I want to make one general observation about India. India enjoys participating in multilateral bodies, particularly which are of an economic character, logistical
yes,
character. But where political issues are concerned and which Quad was being pushed towards politics, India becomes very uncomfortable. And India's comfort zone is bilateral. You sit face to face, you discuss issues quietly, understand each other, come up with something that you can do together. But when the moment four people come, and many of those other three have issues with regard to China, but India is the only one that shares a land border of nearly 4,000 kilometers, and that is a disputed border,
yeah.
undemarcated border. Then the last thing China and India need is a military conflict. So I think that is well understood here. And I think that, as I said earlier, Quad is now past its use by date.
I agree with you. In fact, 2 or 3 years ago, I wrote an article for the Diplomat saying as to how India does well in bilateral issues and not as well in multilateral settings, partly because of the Chinese. I want to turn towards our, this is not the least important, but quite an important event. How did you assess the meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump? Do you think it is historical, significant, or it was just ceremonial with not really any significant development?
As an outsider looking at the Beijing theater, I saw this encounter between two world leaders as a very important exchange of views. We are in a world that is extremely turbulent. Many of the things that we had taken for granted after the Cold War are today undermined or are being questioned. Many of the institutions that existed, which the Americans had helped to put up, the United Nations, the Security Council, the
Mhm.
WTO, the IMF, the World Bank, and of course, many of the security issues that big powers had with each other to manage their interests and concerns. Many of those have withered away. And today there is a world order, a world scenario that is extremely insecure because we have no rules, no norms, no guardrails, no institutions. This is, I think, the crucial part. Now, whether Donald Trump is the fit person to discuss these significant matters remains to be seen because he comes to many of these encounters with a very different agenda. He wants to strut on the world stage. He likes the glamour. He likes being, respected, etc. What I noticed was, on the positive side, that he did not do anything Trumpian. He did not do anything seriously stupid. He did not speak out of turn. He sat properly. He followed the agenda. He followed the protocol routine. He read out from the prepared text did not deviate and say something ridiculous. He had good body language with Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping also was equally respectful and saw the whole encounter through. Many people said that, oh, there was no agreement. That was not the purpose. I would say, honestly, the main reason for getting together is to discuss where do we go from here. We need to do something. Trump in the past has talked about the G2,
G2, yes.
and last year he was very robust about it. I think the Chinese have made clear to him that there is no G2 and they have no interest in pursuing any G2, which is why he didn't even mention it and didn't
Yeah.
embarrass his host or anybody else. So the most important aspect that has emerged is the phrase, the set of words, constructive relationship for strategic stability. Constructive relationship for strategic stability. I think this is the key. In this period of conflict, of anarchy, of chaos, this is the most important aspect. And I think this is the message that Xi Jinping would have repeatedly conveyed to Donald Trump, that this unilateral resort to conflict, he would have had in mind the Gaza war and the war on Iran, not only one war on Iran, the second attack on Iran, and the kind of mindset which leads to this kind of assault and destruction, that you can have a quick, easy win. I think Xi Jinping would have conveyed that this is not going to work. There is no such thing as a short, sharp conflict. There is no conflict that yields to you the result that you wanted. And the ramifications of a conflict go far beyond the issues that were at stake when you went to war. So I think this is the principal message, that strategic stability we should now work towards. And that is, therefore, what Trump took back from Beijing was that he was treated well, that he consorted with a leader he respects. He was in this beautiful palace and all the dining room. He loved all that. He also has President Xi Jinping's commitment to visit the US shortly.
Yes.
He also got at least some things that he can take back. He did not return empty handed. The Chinese saw to that. He got a Boeing order, he got a soya bean order, maybe not as large as he would have wanted, but still a few $1 billion, and the opportunity to discuss these issues again. I think what would have happened is some of the markers would have been put down on the page by the two sides, that look, these are issues that we need to go forward with. The one topic on which Xi Jinping was absolutely clear, no compromise at all, is Taiwan.
Yeah.
And I think that that is a message that needed to be given. There used to be American policy with regard to Taiwan earlier, that don't ever make Taiwan an issue of such that you become of such magnitude that you become confrontationist, because you never know where that will go. I think that message has also been given. Taiwan is not a matter on which we should go to war. But if you wish, China has drawn the red line on Taiwan. All the other issues can be discussed with respect between two sides as mature adults, and they can talk about mutual interest. I think that is the way to go. And I saw this article in the Financial Times where the lady has written that not having any great dramatic result is not a bad thing. There
Yeah.
are still several things to be sorted out. And she
Yeah.
put down some points which I like. That there is no decoupling. You are too deeply enmeshed in each other. There is no strategic competition. You have to work with each other all the time. There is no this kind of the negative. There is no war that can yield any positive results. You have seen, if you needed any lesson, is there right in front of your eyes, that you the Americans have got these lessons before. They didn't need Iran to remind them. Recall here the wars that they inflicted upon Afghanistan and Iraq,
Yeah.
how
Iraq.
damaging they were. And they
Yeah.
didn't serve any American interest that anyone can. Americans lost credibility because of those two conflicts, and all talk of the new multipolar world order gained resonance as a result of those American setbacks. The American status in West Asia was never the same after those two setbacks. And yet you find the American leader going in because of Netanyahu. And Netanyahu whispering to him that you will be a president far greater than Abraham Lincoln. So I think it was an important visit from the atmospherics was good. There was a lot of mutual respect. I think they talked seriously to each other. There was no absurdity, no drama, no Trumpian and antics. And I think that it is not a bad thing in itself. They will move forward. There are many of the issues that need to be addressed are very, very complex matters. They can't be just done with two people sitting together and you are in business. I think they have also agreed on one thing, this kind of name calling and bad mouthing, which Donald Trump indulged in his first term, and Biden to some extent continued for a short period until he saw the light. That kind of nonsense has to be done away with. It doesn't serve any purpose. You don't look like a great leader. And I think Xi Jinping, with the grandeur of what he showed to the American people on their television screen, I think he has made it very clear that China is not an American stooge or a subordinate.
No, I agree with you totally. In fact, there's a lot of these jokes going on here in the US that Putin got a tea party and Trump did not get. But I think Trump behaved well. He deserves an A for his conduct. He stayed within control. He remained focused. And to me,
that's very different from when he's with the Europeans.
Yes.
There he misbehaves.
Yes.
There he says things which no one wants to hear because he has contempt for them. He doesn't believe they are in his league.
Exactly. I mean, that is the thing that keeps coming across, that when he meets Putin, when he meets Xi Jinping, even when he meets Prime Minister Modi, he does realize that these are important people and I would like to earn their respect. Whereas when he meets with Europeans, he has just a complete disregard and contempt for them.
The assessment, they need me more than I need them.
Yes,
I think such assessments are not really worthy of serious international relations. But the absence of gravitas comes out in that, which is why I have to strike a note of caution. Did Donald Trump fully understand and appreciate the messages that were being given to him?
I think he got the message on Taiwan. He got the message on Taiwan.
Taiwan message went through because there he didn't wait for any. He spelled it out on television.
Yes.
So on that, see, that is the other messages which he would have given about strategic stability.
I don't think Trump got those. I think for China, the biggest achievement is that they have made Trump pause for Taiwan and think. And so he has not yet approved the second.
He has stopped that defense deal.
Yeah. So
and now you have hawks in ruling in Taiwan and take a certain agenda and all. You could have a change of government at some point. See, the Taiwanese know that they also should not do anything beyond the guardrails that have been well established between China and Taiwan for mutual benefit should not be tampered with.
I agree. Ambassador Saab, thank you very much for such a wonderful discourse. It is always a learning experience for you from whenever I talk to you. And I'm obviously very grateful that you give us so much time. So thank you very much. It was fantastic.
Thank you very much, Professor. Always a delight to be with you.
Thank you.
All good wishes to you.